And welcome everyone to another Smart Money Circle episode. I'm Adam Sarhan. With me today is Peter Evans, who's the CEO and president of Xtract One Technologies. Ticker symbol is XTRAF, and it trades in Toronto. Peter, thank you so much for taking the time and welcome to the Smart Money Circle.
Well, thank you very much, Adam, for having me. I've been looking forward to this call all week long.
Excellent. So, Peter, I always like to begin. Can you please tell us your story and how you got to where you are today?
Wow, that's a long story. I've been in high tech all my life, and I was very fortunate to have a couple of opportunities with some small startups along my journey, very much around digital transformation of industries, and moving from old analog type approaches to digital, and whether that was telecom or cybersecurity or AI SaaS type models. These are all sort of the things that I've done in my career. And I was approached to look at Xtract One. And what struck me as a very, very interesting opportunity. The physical security industry, we're all familiar with guards and guns and walk-through metal detectors, was probably the only marketplace that hadn't been digitally transformed. And we had this really interesting technology where we thought we can make a difference and create an unbelievable guest experience by increasing security. And what struck me about the company was really excellent technology, but had been stumbling for direction and execution. So what better way to join a company at that stage and see what we can do about, getting it onto the right path and getting it on a rocket ride, which we've done.
Wow, I love that. Okay, so let's talk about the company. Please let us know what you do and some of your competitive advantages.
Yeah. Well, simplest way of putting it, Adam, you and I go see our favorite sports team. We go to see a show at Radio City Music Hall or something like that. These venues are all protecting against the threat of weapons. And in this day and age, there's more and more weapons. We read about these stories in the news every single day about yet another shooting. It's a tragedy. In fact, it's happening so much that I think we as a society are becoming a little bit numb to it. But you see something that happened last week in New York at the NFL headquarters, and it causes us all to wake up. Well, we're all used to those screening methods, which were actually developed 50, 60 years ago with a walk-through metal detector. And at that time, we walked around with a leather wallet, maybe the keys to our car. And so metal was a proxy for a weapon. In this day and age, society is looking for something different. We've got a higher experience expectation. We spent thousands of dollars to go see Coldplay or T Swift. And, we don't want to be standing in line for 90 minutes having to take everything out of our pocket to go through a walk-through metal detector. And, in our case, we've got purpose-built sensors, AI software that correlates the data that comes out of those purpose-built sensors. And you or I, Adam, we just walk through, or school children going to school, or people going to their favorite hospital, just walk in as if there was nothing there. Just keep on walking, no taking things out of your pocket. But if you have a gun or a knife, it will detect an alert on that. So the average person walks through transparently and frictionlessly, not even knowing they've been screened. Yet, from a security perspective, we know who's in the building with a gun, with a knife, or bomb making parts or things like that. So, in a world where more and more people are looking to be protected in those places we all gather, we can provide that value without negatively impacting the guest experience. And so, competitive differentiators, we're known as an and, not an or. Most technologies, you have a choice. I'm either going to detect all the weapons, but I'm going to have a very negative impact. You're going to have to take everything out of your pockets. It's going to be slow. You're going to be in a long line. Or I'm going to turn the sensitivity down on those systems so maybe they don't learn your cell phone but now knives and guns like a Glock 19 go through. We're an and. I can catch the firearms. We can catch the edge weapons. You can walk right in 3,000 people per hour through a doorway, right? With very few alerts. And so most people like our customers, like Madison Square Garden, Radio City Music Hall, and the Sphere, and hospitals and things like that, they love it. And more importantly, their customers love it.
Yeah, for sure, because you create a safe environment. So let's talk about that in just a little bit more detail so I understand. When the customer walks through the venue, you don't have to stop, wait in a long line because everybody in front of us and behind us will be taking out everything and then putting it back in again. And some
Yeah,
security random person standing there. What your technology allows us to do is just walk right through. The person
yeah,
gets screened with their consent, I'm assuming, to enter the property. And I'm assuming you have facial recognition. You're using AI. So clearly you can use a lot more analysis or data to screen the person than just a metal detector that has no idea who's walking through it to
yeah,
see whether threat or criminal background or whatever the case may be, and then adjust accordingly and let security know. I mean, do you flag it right there? Hey, there's a gun in the pocket, like a security metal detector would go bing, 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 or how does it
yeah.
work?
Well, sorry, let me do this. What the system is doing is the sensors are looking for the characteristics of the metals that walk through. So we don't necessarily have to use facial recognition, but we'll talk about that in a moment. The primary thing is you're looking at the characteristics of the metal, the density, the reflective properties, the magnetic signals. And with our latest iteration of the product, we're looking at all the combinations of metals and the amounts. And so think of it this way: an object goes through our system that goes a little bit of aluminum, a little bit of gold, a little bit of platinum, a little bit of lithium. That's a smartphone. Oh, this thing here has got a little bit of gold, a little bit of platinum, a little bit, a lot more lithium, a little more aluminum. That's a laptop. So I'm essentially doing object identification because of all the combinations of the metals. Now, the next thing, the object that goes through, that's 10 ounces of steel, 4 ounces of brass, and 2 ounces of lead. That's a gun. So we can identify those objects and basically whitelist the things that are fine, laptops, tablets, cell phones, things like that, but then highlight that's a gun, that's a knife. And then because of that data, we can actually say that's a gun in the backpack, that's a knife in the pocket. From a security guard's point of view, I'm no longer getting someone walking through a metal detector going beep. Oh, it's their belt buckle or it's their eyeglasses or whatever. I'm now just letting people flow on through, flow on through, flow on through. And it just looks like there's nothing there and everyone's streaming right through into the building. And then the security guard, they've got a tablet and it shows a picture of you because we have a camera taking a picture of the individual and it shows you exactly where and what type of weapon is available or on that person. So now from a security point of view, I can walk up and say, Sir, Adam, do you have a gun in your pocket? And
Right.
you now know that I know that, so you better not lie to me. Now, the interesting thing is you mentioned facial recognition. We're not stopping there. The primary driver for our company is the weapons threat, and it's growing around the world. Look at a country like the UK. They just invoked Martin's Law, which is now mandating that any venue more than 800 people must screen for weapons. Otherwise, they have a significant penalty to play, right, or to pay. That's got some real teeth to it. And all of a sudden, these countries around the world, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, all of Europe, where they have all these problems, particularly knives, are becoming markets for us that we haven't yet fully served yet. So there's huge upside in terms of the TAM. Now, coming back to your question, you think about this. Now you're going to Madison Square Garden to see the Knicks play, right? Or where you live, Adam, down in Orlando, you're going to go see the Magic play. Not only can I screen for weapons, but if I've got cameras in there, there's a potential for us to do more and start thinking about this is Adam. Adam hasn't been banned from the venue. Adam has a valid ticket. Adam doesn't have a weapon, and you haven't broken stride walking from the sidewalk to your seat. And we've done all those checks all along the way. And then, if you really want, you can take it a little bit further and say, let's go scan social media. And notice that Adam has said, next time LeBron James is in town, I'm going to mess him up. Well, now we've got your picture from social media. We feed it into our systems, and they recognize you on approach to the building. So while we're not doing all of those things today, the platform has the extensibility, the capability to do that. And from an investor point of view, not only is the weapons market a significant market, a huge market for us, but we're starting to layer on more and more value-added software that we're just stacking on top of the incumbency that we've already created with our customers, which creates an incredible recurring revenue model for our business.
Yeah, I love that. And then also, I'm assuming you can upsell them. Want fries with that? So you can give them additional services as well. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We're doing those kinds of things today. We have some customers because we're doing this object recognition in the distribution centers. One of the biggest problems is employee theft. Employees stealing earbuds, Apple watches, and selling them on eBay. One big retailer told us they lose about $5 to $10 million per distribution center. So tuning for them and upsell value is, well, not only are we screening for weapons coming into your facility, which is a big problem in the blue collar worker environment, right? So I think every place we've got blue collar workers, auto manufacturers, distribution centers, places like that. But I can now also steal for electronic theft on the way out the door. And so I'm a data center and I'm worried about someone stealing intellectual property on a thumb drive. We can alert on that. I'm worried about someone stealing an Apple Watch and putting it in their pants pocket and leaving the building. We can do that too. So there's more and more opportunities. But right now, the demand, unfortunately, because of the state of the world, the demand for weapons detection is unbelievable. I've got a lot of gray hair. I've never seen anything like this in my career before.
Yeah, you definitely have you got your finger on the pulse. There's no question about that. Plus demand for AI, and that's only going to the roof as well. So you're into two I guess the
Eh,
Venn diagram would become the mind, two overlapping circles, and you're right in that sweet spot.
Exactly, exactly. And the AI has been purpose built to solve this problem specifically. It's very unique. So there's a lot of intellectual property that's been built around that. And we're doing some things very, very uniquely that allows us to be that and, not the or. And we're pleased. We just announced this week a major contract with one of the school systems in the United States, the seventh largest one in Florida. That was a head-to-head test of all the different technologies, and hands down, they said, let's go. And you start to think about, okay, K through 12. Nobody wants guns in schools. There's 130,000 K through 12 schools in North America, and that's just one small district that we announced this week. It's about a $13 billion opportunity, and we uniquely can allow all those kids to walk in with their backpacks, their laptops, their binders, their chargers, their headsets, and all that, and not alert unless they have a gun or a knife. So we're playing to a $13 billion market just with that one single market application.
Yeah, no, it's really, really powerful. And then all the other schools as well, and all the way up. I mean, it just goes, it doesn't end. I mean, not
Yeah.
even schools, even after schools, they go into the workforce, every job too. Nobody wants to be sitting next to some guy with a gun or whatever crazy nonsense could happen. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly right. Like we saw in New York last week. Unfortunately, since then we've seen an uptick in, office buildings. And again, the average office worker is walking with a backpack with a laptop, which is going to alert. It's going to light up more than a Christmas tree with the amount of metal that's in there going through a metal detector or any other solution. The fact that they can walk in straight to their meeting without being detained, but we can keep the weapons out. That's huge. The other market that's very big for us right now is healthcare. Unfortunately, 76% of workplace violence happens in the healthcare environment, due
Mm.
to, mental issues, psychological issues, drug-related issues, pain-related issues. There's lots and lots of stories. In fact, in New York 2 years ago, the number one grievance of the healthcare workers when they went on strike was keep me safe at work.
Mhm.
Right. And so we're finding our business is doing extremely well in the healthcare marketplace these days because we can uniquely catch the small little blades if we have to.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So let's shift the conversation a little bit now to some timeless lessons. How do you
Hmm.
handle risk? And what are some mistakes you see people make with respect to risk management?
Yeah, it's a great question because if you're dealing with weapons, the last thing you want to do is have a failure. So we spend a lot of time. In fact, I'm today with a customer as we're going through, kind of an annual preventative maintenance activity where we not only look at the technologies themselves, but we actually look at their whole operations. So we train extensively the customers and we certify them. We have to train and certify our partners also. If they're not certified, then they can't represent our technologies because of the liability and the risk. And then we go back with the customers and, we've delivered programs where they can continuously test their employees to make sure the systems are being set up correctly, operated correctly, managed correctly. A failure to do so means that something terrible could happen. And, to manage that risk, we proactively invest in making sure our customers are set up for success.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Okay, so let's talk about some timeless lessons that you've learned along the way that you'd like to share with the audience, please, in business and life, anywhere you want to go.
Through my career, wow, the first one is luck comes from grit and hard work. There are a lot of people, you look at somebody and say, that guy's very, very lucky. That's a guy who put in the sweat equity for years and years and years and years. I mean, you look at someone like a Jeff Bezos. I remember seeing the black and white photos of him in a little tiny office where he's sitting on a cardboard box for his chair. And the guy put the time in, he put the hours in, and so, grit, there is no luck, there's only grit and staying very, very focused. The second thing to me is surprisingly, it's a very, very small industry, no matter what industry you're in. It never ceases to amaze me how, I'll run into someone that I met 10 years ago. And, you always want to make sure that you treat people really, really well. I think one of the things that we do very well is over rotate on taking care of customers. As you said, it's a liability. I had a great lunch the other day with a gentleman at one of the major sports teams, and he said to me, "Hey, on Thursday, make sure you say hi to Tim for me." How did this guy know I was flying to the other side of the country to have Tim with one of his counter or lunch with one of his counterparts? It's a small industry. Everyone talks, and they'll speak favorably about you or they'll speak unfavorably about you. So always make sure you're going that extra mile. Those are a couple that come to mind, and then the other thing is don't forget to stop and smell the roses. I mean, it's easy to say. My lovely daughter went off to college yesterday. It was breaking my heart. All right. And so we try and spend as much time as we can. And those things are very important to me.
Yeah, no, I absolutely, absolutely, it's brilliant. And your point about luck and grit. So my daughter, she just got me into Hamilton, the Broadway show, and we saw it up
Yeah.
in the this type of stuff. And one of the songs it says nonstop, and they're thinking about Hamilton, and like, how's the guy so good? I mean, he's done so much. I mean, the guy's just nonstop. So to your
Yeah.
point about grit and just be nonstop, and you put the work in, you get the results, and it's just fantastic. All right, let's talk about the other side of that coin, timeless mistakes you've made, you've seen other people make, and how do you avoid them?
Wow, that's a really great question. Timeless mistakes. Um, Boy, there's been a bunch of them along the way. I think sometimes things like following up, don't just, you're on a journey with a customer. You're on a journey as a business. You're on a journey with all your employees. You're on a journey with all your stakeholders. And so, make sure you stay connected. When you stop remembering your why as a business, right? You move as a company from having a company of people acting like owners to people acting like employees. I was with a great company and we started with 37 credit cards that were maxed out to try and keep the company afloat. Our furniture was like a $2 inflatable green sofa that we got from the dollar store. Fast forward 14 years, we were a $250 million publicly traded company on NASDAQ. And then we got bought. We got bought by IBM. And it was fascinating to me, no disrespect to IBM, but how quickly, like we were 1,300 people, but it still felt like that 12-person startup where everyone was passionate about what we're doing, even though we'd grown to that level. And that passion creates this exponential kind of flywheel effect for the business when everyone feels like an owner, whether they're sweeping the floors or the CEO. Everyone feels like it's important to them. They're an owner in the business. And unfortunately, through the acquisition, it was only 6 months before everyone felt like an employee. And the vibe, if you will, was gone. You've got to keep that vibe. If you lose it, then the company is just going to die eventually. And so, we work very, very hard at that here. We work at it very, very hard with our customers, with our employees, anything we can do to keep that passion.
Yeah, that is so extremely powerful. That's a great lesson. Thank you for sharing. Okay, next topic is leadership. You're a leader here. You've been leaders before. Let's talk about leadership. What makes a great leader, and what are some lessons you've learned about leadership that you'd like to share?
There's a great quote I read once from the Book of Tao, and it was something like the leader kind of leads with a kind of an invisible hand to the point where the employee said, "Look, we did it ourselves." And that idea that they're all on the same journey we are. I've had some great mentors in my career. People have helped me along the way. People have taken a chance on me. People have kind of promoted me 2 levels beyond what I thought I should be because they said, look, we believe in you. Go get it done. And we give people that bandwidth. You give them your trust. It's amazing what people can actually do if you give them that opportunity. So, from a leadership point of view, I'm very, very involved. It's the nature of how I'm wired. I like to get into the details. I'll crawl around the floor, pulling the Ethernet cables there because, I'm not better than anyone else. I want to show the customers we care about you at all levels of the company. But where I can, trying to kind of impart the wisdom on the team and then let them go, let them run.
Yeah, that is really, really powerful. I love that. Okay, let's talk about adversity. Getting to where you are and overcoming adversity is almost part of parcel with what needs to get done to succeed. How do you handle
Yeah.
adversity, and what are some obstacles you've had to overcome along the way?
I have this wonderful dog, and he's amazing, and he loves to catch the frisbee. He's very, very smart, very sharp. And whenever, I run into sort of a challenge in life or a challenge in the business, he and I go for a walk on the beach and we throw the frisbee for a long time. And it just gets you to clear your head a little bit, take a step back, all right, and understand like what's really important. It's like that old 24-hour rule. Never send the email when you're angry. Pause for 20 hours and breathe. And if you could do that and just take a step back, sometimes context comes around. It's easy to say this person made this mistake. That customer ticked me off about X or Y. But sometimes you have to understand and walk a mile in that person's shoes. There probably wasn't malicious intent. What was their day like that they were going through that they had that negative reaction and step back a little bit? As a society, it's easy to default to the negative. It's the way our brains are wired. It goes back to when we were cavemen, right? If we didn't assume the worst, then the saber-toothed tiger was going to eat us in the cave one day. So you had to prepare for the worst. But then it means that we create this bias around the people we're working with and things like that. There's no problem that can't be solved. Like this customer I'm at today, they were having some challenges. And we were at the point of going, maybe we just need to walk away. So we came on out, spent some time, had the conversation, just realized people are people and how do I solve their problem for them? So for me, take a step back and breathe whenever I can, clear the air, and then trying to understand, okay, what's really going on with this other person? How can we help them to get where they've got to get to be?
Yeah, no, I love that. That's really, really brilliant. Instead of making that emotional decision and while you're all ramped up and worked up,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. It's
yeah,
now,
yeah.
having said that, Adam, a picture was once painted about me that said Peter is monumentally impatient about outcomes. And it's true. If you're not focused on the outcomes, if you're not focused on delivering the value to the customer, delivering the value to shareholders, these sorts of things, you're just practicing business. You can put up all the beautiful websites you want and all the beautiful, PowerPoint presentations. You're practicing business. The business of business. I had a great mentor once. Actually, he was an advisor to the Prime Minister of Canada on strategy. And he used to say, as I take an MBA class from me, he used to say, the business of business is making money. Now, you can kind of take some variations around that, but he used to use that as our guiding principle. Everything else is just conversation. You've got to focus on the outcomes, right? And that's what we're really trying to deliver as a small company here. And then fortunately, we've been able to build a very interesting, very dynamic company that's got unbelievable operational scale, but it's all been built in a manner to deliver the outcomes.
Yeah, I love that. So here's a great line. It's not mine, given to me by someone else. He goes, "It don't in business, it don't mean a thing unless it goes ka-ching."
Yeah, same idea, right?
Exactly.
Other than that, you're just practicing business, you
Yeah,
know?
no, I love it. Okay, final question for you, Peters. What is the best piece of advice you'd like to give the audience or your 30-year-old self?
Wow. Whew, um, Gosh, I'm trying to remember what the quote was. It just escaped me. But the idea is like, this too shall pass, right? And the idea like things happen very, very quickly. When I joined this company, it feels like a week ago, but it was actually a lot longer. Time flies. You've got to stop. You've got to spend time on things that are important, not get caught in the weeds, right? It's the time ticks and it moves really, really quickly. And so, again, back to outcomes. Focus on those outcomes and the delivery of those as fast as you can, but make sure you're having fun along the journey. I had thought about what was my priorities in business once. And for me, you know, make sure that what you're doing is making a difference. Whether it's a new product that you're innovating, where it says impact on society, whatever it is, it's something new, it's innovative, it's making a difference. Two, make sure you have a whole lot of fun along the way. And if you do that well, and that's, treating people with dignity, respect, these sorts of things, not betraying your morals. If you do number one and number two well, number three objective, make a lot of money, always happens.
It's almost inevitable. It's like if you do the sit-ups and you eat right, what's going to happen? You're going to have a flatter stomach than if you don't do that stuff. So
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So make a difference, have a lot of fun, make a lot of money. And do number one and number two right, you'll get number three.
I absolutely love it. Peter, thank you so much for coming on the show. Congrats on all your success, all your future success. I love what you're doing. You're definitely making a big impact. And hopefully we'll have you on again soon. This was absolutely fantastic.
I love it, Adam. Let's do this more often.